Is it a monster or is it Mon3tr? Is it a dog? Is it a cat? No, it's Mon3tr. These are spikes, by the way. Mon3tr will be the first one released out of the 4 big titans. Mon3tr, following Calcid's routes, is a medic. However, unlike Calcid's gluttonous instinct for heals, Mon3tr would actually heal her allies without priority for others. And also the chain medic part. Chain medics are medics that chains heals. However, each chain bounce is reduced by 25% healing, so her first target would receive 100% of her heals, then 75% and then 50%. Unlike AoE medics, they can actually heal people outside of their range, using this chain mechanic. The range for the chains is the 8 surrounding tiles around the operator that's being healed, and they are very squishy, with basically no defense or HP, and literally 0 arts resist. Except their somewhat mediocre attack. So far, the chain medics we have is an Undertale character and a seasoning for my brisket. So how is Mon3tr going to turn this subclass around? By doing exactly what medics don't do, going into combat mode. Talent 1. She can summon a reconstruct on a ground tile within attack range and can only be healed by Mon3tr. Allies around the reconstruct gain 15% attack. When the reconstruct receives healing from itself or Mon3tr, add 1 additional bounce with the same healing amount. This, at first, to me, and probably to you, I don't know, doesn't seem too much at first, until you see this talent perform in practice. The reconstruct provides a permanent attack buff to allies just by being around it, which also chains well with Mon3tr chain healing archetype. So already you can see how a very simple thing has given us a not so noticeable buff, but it's permanent, so it's still good and something that can divert enemies' attention with its not so high defense or arts resist, but it does have a massive health pool. And also when the reconstruct gets healed, it adds an additional bounce with the same healing amount, pretty much fighting with the chain medic flaw and giving the healing more range technically. And don't even worry about the cost, it's free DP. If you can afford putting Texas and Yato down every 15 seconds, you can afford free DP. Granted, this thing does lose health over time, but it's being placed inside of Mon3tr's range anyway, so it's always going to be healed. All of this packaged with a short deployment time of 15 seconds. Very nice. And obviously there are flaws to this talent. And for one thing, it's going to take space. You're gonna have to give it a tile worth of space inside of her range. Now, that may not seem like an issue because stages usually have around 90 million stages, so what's the issue? Well, the issue is, it can only be placed on a ground tile that also needs to be inside of Mon3tr's range. So this does kind of limit your placement freedom, but honestly for 99% of the stages, this is not an issue. Talent 2. When Mon3tr or the reconstruct heals the target, self and target attack speed increase by 20 for 10 seconds. Does not stack. A very short talent, but it still revolves around the idea of as long as you're being healed or near Mon3tr, you're going to be strong and healthy. Not being able to stack is fair, but you might be wondering, what if operators are max HP? Mon3tr may care, but the reconstruct, I don't give a shit, making this buff literally permanent. One flaw I can see is that, again, you're going to have to commit to putting operators next to her, and sometimes you don't want to do that. Skill 1. Increase the next heal by 200% of attack, and more bouncing meaning more range. Very simple skill. Works well with her talent and a very nice 2 heal offensive recovery. There's going to be a lot of offensive recovery skills, but I hope you realize there's nothing to worry about since she's always healing her thing anyways. Moving on. Skill 2 is where she becomes racist, like Calcid, but in a good way. Activating this skill, she will prioritize her reconstruct. The reconstruct also performs a bouncing heal when healed by Mon3tr, also increasing the effect of her second talent. This skill is literally what any medic dreams of. Not only that the healing is very good, it also increases her buff by 2.8 times. Not a lot to say about this except it's literally, if you're ever in her range, you get big and healthy. In a way, yeah, she does prioritize the construct, making the healing to her targets an actual process, like a delay. But unless you're in some extreme timing situation, then this is not an issue at all. The word prioritizing could have literally meant much different. Alright, let's all be glad that it's not she has to heal the reconstruct. So be happy that at least when the Reconstruct dies, she can at least still heal her allies. And obviously a flaw that this skill has is the offensive recovery. It does have a very good initial SP, only requiring 2 heals from her for the skill, but having to heal 15 times is kinda long. Her attack speed is literally almost 3 seconds, meaning that it will take around 30 to 40 seconds of constant healing for this skill. Skill 3 is where she actually becomes Mon3tr. Upon activating skill, her skill range becomes a 3x3 donut, changing position to where the Reconstruct is, plus 3 30% attack, attacks faster, block count +2, plus 5000 max HP, gradually lose 80 HP, attacks all blocked enemies as true damage, and each attack heals by 50% attack. Now, if you know this skill fairly well, it definitely is one of those skills that you can't go without in pretty much any stage. For the most part. From face value, this skill has a multi-target true damage healing. No utility, but we can ignore that for now. I don't feel like I need to explain much about this skill, except really if there's just a big group of anything. From a wave enemies to level 100 Mafia boss, she'll pretty much do a very good job in dealing damage. Multi-target too, so during DPS, it's hard to interrupt her boss DPS, and healing to sustain herself and allies. Only a few issues are that, first, she will continuously leak HP. So if there's literally nothing around, it's kind of a waste to just have her in this state. And compared to her skill 2, the buffs and the healings she provides to her allies are night and day. Basically, if there's a big wave of anything that you want to clean up for 25 seconds or do boss DPS, put on this skill. But if the whole stage is pretty much all about careful execution or something that you just really need to hold your fort with your team, this skill just isn't compared to skill 2. And I'm sure a lot of people will tell you it's overkill for anything that's below mid-game content. I'm not saying it's bad for those, just saying that this skill is technically more niche for endgame than skill 2. Your priority for her skills are 2 or 3, then 1, or 3 or 2. Then 1, if you're more interested in using her S3 for DPS or cleaning a bunch of big dudes. But I would still recommend also focusing S2 right after you finish S3 too, just because that this healing source is still very reliable for healing and buffs. Also works well in almost any sort of content. S1 is whatever, it's an AFK skill that isn't too bad. She is absolutely insane for endgame. Endgame story or mode, she will almost always dominate, even for stages that she's less desirable in. Unless it's CC. Let's talk about that. The only thing that Mon3tr really provides in CC are healing that won't really out-heal anything bigger than a decently powerful elite enemy, and DPS buffs that can be replaced with other operators anyway. Unless it's a situation where you kinda need both, she's not going to do too much. And it's probably best to put on her skill 3 and let her try her best to slowly grind down beefier enemies with true damage. However, it's different when it comes to IS, since, yeah, IS can have beefy enemies, but it can also be combated with relics, such as relics that gives attack speed, quite literally makes her skills basically always active. And the majority of IS stages appreciate very good healing with support buff, or AoE true damage. It's just a lot that she can provide that isn't utility or slow or whatnot, basically making her never a bad pick character. Should you pull for Mon3tr? Yes, if you are a fanboy. Yes, if your most listened song was Godzilla by Eminem. Yes, if you are not in student debt. And no, if you still think these are still ears. Will I be putting on Mon3tr? Yes. Can I win the 50-50? No.